Previously on Bugsnax. Bunger!
Beffica, get back here!
We have to go back!
I love it. Welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club where we play games together and brew great conversation. My name is Jenny.
And I'm Joel.
And we're here to talk about Bunger.
Bugsnax! If you have not listened to the Bugsnax jam yet,
it's Bugsnax. It's so good.
It's so good. And if we can bring you an eighth of the joy that the Bugsnax song has brought us over the last month.
It's a really specific fraction, an eighth.
No, it's literally that is the goal.
That is
1/8.
Okay. We're gonna try to achieve 1/8 of that.
There's a lot of joy that came from that song.
The theme song, it's Bugsnax, is very joyful. Actually, I would be very happy if we achieved 1/8.
1/8 feels doable.
Yeah.
Hopefully y'all have something cozy to drink. Oh, you have a little shark mug today.
I do. My mug today for our conversation is I'm doing my best. It's a little shark mug that's doing its best.
If we can do our best, we will hit our 1/8 goal.
Yes.
And you can be a part of that.
Yes.
Cheers
To that.
So we're talking Bugsnax.
Mm-hmm. If you all have been joining in this month, we've been playing the game, talking about it in Discord. If you've been reading the newsletters or just maybe playing it on your own, just thinking your own thoughts and tuning into the podcast, this is our deep dive. So we are going to go through the entire game, share our thoughts, and talk a bit more about what it's like to play a game about eating snacks that change your body in more ways than just giving you nutrition.
Mm-hmm. And change the body as in the group of us.
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk a lot about community today as well.
Yeah. This game was incredible. I have to say, just gut feelings about the game. For me, I really loved that it started as sort of this Pokemon-like really interesting adventure with fun mechanics, but the more you get to know the characters, the more you talk to everyone, it really becomes a character drama and a really character-driven story.
100%.
And it was just such a joy to go on this journey with them. And I am so excited to talk about each of their relationships and personalities, because that is what really sold the game for me at the end of the day.
100% agree. I think that's a great call out. I would add, if you have not checked out our interview with Kevin, the game's creative lead and writer, do go back and listen to that interview. We had such a good time talking to them and understanding a little bit more about what went on behind the scenes during the creation.
Yeah, I was really, really pleasantly, I don't know, I'm not surprised because I think I was expecting a great conversation, but just the things we got to learn about how they went through the process, the surprises. I was surprised that they said they had so many things get cut, which I always find really interesting. That's as my production brain, because I also am a producer for games, that's the most fascinating part to me is all of the ideas that get removed from the game and what's left, because that is the hardest part, but the most essential part of making a good game is cutting things out.
That is fascinating. I had not thought about it that way. But especially in a game where you could have infinite Bugsnax and infinite characters in your community, I think finding a way that you can streamline the story. This is one of the things that we discussed was I was so invested in each of these characters in very different ways and to different levels. But there was just the right amount of people to convince me that this is a diversely interested group of people that have all come together, and the drama between them seems very natural based on the differences of interests there.
And I liked it. I liked that that they didn't get along.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to me because I think in a lot of games, and I guess specifically that their conflicts felt very real, and I could see either myself or other people I knew in the conflicts that they had, which I don't know, maybe I shouldn't admit that, but it was really interesting because I think in a lot of games when you see relationships between characters, either they're very idealistic and we're a band of heroes that we all get along and we're doing these things and fighting God and
we're fighting God, so we're talking about Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. But I think the dynamics of the characters, the Grumpuses, was really relatable and interesting, and they were all flawed, but also you cared about them so much by the end because they're very real.
Yes. And so if you have not like watched a game trailer or played the game Bugsnax, the Grumpuses are like the community of people that you're following. They look very much like Muppets, I would say, like Muppet-like creatures. And I agree. There's almost like they felt very human in that way because of the drama, because of the levels of interest and types of interest. And because of how flawed literally every one of them are. And I think that really builds the level of interest in the story. And
Did you have a favorite Grumpus?
For those that can't see me at home, I have to have the characters pulled up because I'm awful with character names. I was really into Cromdo Face, the used car salesman type dude. It was the first set of like side quests, like optional side quests that I did and got invested in. And not because he was like a good dude. No. Just because he's like perhaps the easiest to hate. He was my favorite character to play with. Like he literally scams you. The very first thing that happens when you meet Cromdo is he scams you with this bridge that he tries to sell you. So that was the character that like stood out to me as the least nice and most fun character. How about you? Who are your faves?
Oh, it's tough. I think it's hard to pick. I really, really loved Beffica, just because I love how unabashed she was about being like, bestie, I want the goss and I don't care what I need to do to get it. And I think just her whole thing, I'm like, again, it's not necessarily like the most ideal qualities that you would want to see in people. And, you know, it's not that she's the greatest person ever, but I think I really enjoyed every time I got to talk to her. Yeah. I also really love, was it Chandlo and Snorpy? Those two for me were like, I just adored their relationship.
In-game goals.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they were so cute, and seeing their arc play out, and how Snorpy was just kind of like, I don't know, not oblivious, but just didn't quite understand the level that their relationship was already at, I thought was really funny. They were very sweet.
Just a quick personal plug. My wife and I, when we were in the courting phase, she came to visit me during like summer break in college at one point, and this is before we were like an official couple. Yeah. And she stayed at my house. Like we went on these walks, we were holding hands, it's like this whole thing. And then while we're walking, I asked if she wanted to be my girlfriend, and she told a story instead of saying yes or no. And I walked away from that exchange thinking, well, she said no. And she walked away from that exchange thinking, we're in a relationship now. And so gosh. Like, you know, she goes back to Illinois where she's from, and we're like talking on the phone probably like a couple weeks later. And I was like, I feel like we're really close. Like, I feel like we're kind of in a relationship. And she's like, I thought we were. So I have lived out the Chandlo Snorpy.
So you are couple goals. You're adorable.
Man, if I could be as rock solid as Chandlo, what a great.
I don't know if Lee would like being Snorpy in a relationship.
No, yeah, I think just from like a niceness perspective, she's the Chandlo. Yeah. She's the Chandlo in our relationship.
So you're the Snorpy. That's adorable.
Oh, so good. Yeah, so out of curiosity, so I also love the gossip mongers. It's one of my favorite character tropes just in general. Yes. Any particular Grumpus that just kind of grated on you or rubbed you the wrong way?
I didn't like. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you brought this app up that had all the characters, because I feel like I just didn't have the opportunity really to connect with Floofty Fizzlebean, I think the
Snorpy's sister.
Yes. I think what really kind of made me not connect with that character was just the whole science experiment that Floofy was running on herself, and the fact that she was like, I'm gonna turn myself into Bugsnax and like try and eat myself, basically. I was like, this is too far. This is not...
She wants to be God.
This is not what we should be doing. Where's like the board? Where is the ethics in our science research here? So I didn't
Speaking
really
of
enjoy
that, one thing that was kind of surprising to me, so you mentioned that you start the game and it feels like a Pokemon-like experience, and then it becomes more character-driven. I also thought from like a puzzle perspective that a big part of the game, once you start changing characters' bodies and anatomy to match a Bugsnax, which is a central part of the game, I thought we were going to have to change parts of ourselves to complete various story points. So like at one point there's a character who wants to walk to the desert, it's really hot, and he's like, give me the popsicle legs from this Bugsnax that's popsicle based. And you do that, and I was like, oh cool, so I will probably eventually do that for myself. And that wasn't a part of the game. It was like kind of a shocking thing for me.
Well, and I remember in our conversation with Kevin, they said, we're allergic narratively, which I thought was interesting. But I think it was in one of those things from a producer standpoint when they said like that had to essentially be cut, because if you're changing yourself, that adds a whole other level to the game and layer of scope, which I think is really interesting. And I kind of like that we didn't have the option to give ourselves Bugsnax. I think it allowed me at least to focus more on the characters and their journeys and why they were, their relationship with the snacks versus my relationship with the snacks, which I feel like could have been, that's just a different story, right? That's just an interesting take that we could have gone down, but the fact that we didn't meant I was more focused on the characters and why they were so excited about the snacks or why they weren't excited or, all of that.
You're absolutely right. Like if you had to do this, because like one of the central themes throughout or motifs is like engaging with Bugsnax ain't good for you.
No.
If they would have forced you as a character to engage with Bugsnax or to use them in that way, it kind of would have forced you into an awkward position in terms of like the almost morality of that. Right.
Which again, it could have been interesting because then by the end, it's one of those things where by the end, maybe it's that fun twist where you realize, by me being so excited about the snacks, I lost the lead about Eggabell and Elizabert, and I was supposed to be there finding them. I think that could have been interesting.
Totally.
But again, I think for simplicity's sake and not simply from the development side, but just from a player standpoint, there's already so much to think about that I kind of like that it wasn't there. But I do think it is interesting just in real life to think about our own Bugsnax, like what is a Bugsnax for us in real life? And that was one of the questions that we had in a recent one of the newsletters this month is we all have coping mechanisms. We all do things that we love and we enjoy and help us get through the day. At what point does it become something that we're leaning on? Maybe not even to the point of addiction, but just something that's unhealthy that we're leaning on.
Yep.
And I thought that was really interesting to think about.
Yeah, and that I totally agree with you. Because the story was very tight. I think the game was 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah,
right, and
perfect length. Honestly,
perfect length. Yes, for a Joel as well. I totally agree. And you're right. It really would have changed the focus in terms of like, oh, I'm puzzling my way through this instead of like every side quest is there so that you can further explore characters and what happened to the community or what is happening to the community.
Yeah.
I'm really excited as we get into this to see if you uncovered some mysteries that I was not able to solve. But I don't want to spoil anything because I know we tend to go a little bit more in order.
Yeah, well, yeah, and this one was interesting because while there is a narrative order, there is, a plot that has an order of operations, I found this it felt very open as a game. Like, as soon as you find sort of the first group of Grumpuses, I think it's like Wambus, Triffany, and Bethica, those three, it kind of opened up so that you could spend more time focusing on, I'm just going to go to these areas and catch as many of the snacks that I can before I move on. You don't have to interview everyone immediately. So I thought that was really interesting how it was more open than I also thought it was, even though it still went on a pretty, it still had a very guided sense of narrative.
Did you spend a lot of time catching Bugsnax outside of what was required for the narrative?
I did, mostly because I thought it was really I wanted to get better at it. I also was just, to be really blunt, I was very bad at catching Bugsnax. I was so uncoordinated. I don't think I've ever felt more uncoordinated except maybe when playing like a first-person shooter. I personally, I don't get nauseous when I play first-person games, but I do feel very clunky. Like my hands just never know what to press, and I tend to panic. And then I really don't know what buttons to press. And so it took me a couple of areas to actually get into the swing of things where I was catching things and not just sort of frantically going into the circular tool. I don't know. Tool wheel. Yes, thank you. And fumbling my way through, like switching, because the game requires a decent amount of dexterity in some of these cases where you're like, I have to throw out the barrel, and I have to then switch and throw out some chocolate sauce, and then I have to switch back, and that just took me a little bit of time.
Yeah, I am always bad at games, so it was par for the course. I feel like there was a period of my life where like I was a marvel at first person shooter games. GoldenEye and Turok 2 and like Halo 1, not Halo 2 or anything after that. But like I don't know what happened. I think it's maybe because like I studied abroad in college for a semester, and during that time I didn't play any video games.
Lost your touch.
But like it was literally by the time I came back, that was when Guitar Hero released. That was when like Halo 3 came out, and it was like everyone was so much better than me at these things that it was like, well, I'm just never gonna play these games again. I could play Say It Ain't So on Guitar Hero pretty well, but that was about it.
I would go to really random memory that you just unlocked. We had this just big electronics store called Fry's.
Fry's, baby.
Oh my gosh. And I remember they had a DDR pad and a Guitar Hero station.
Yes.
And my mom, we would convince her, because we were like, we didn't have that at our house. And so we would convince my mom to take us to Fry's, and we would just go and try and play for like 30-minute stints. And oh my gosh, the security guards at Fry's did not like us. They started recognizing me and my brother, and they would start hovering close.
What?
And because they would be like, you're not here buying anything.
See, this is why Fry's didn't make it. Because of the attitudes like that.
Someday we would have bought a DDR pad, maybe.
Or, I mean, like, you're literally one of the biggest names in video games.
Oh, God.
And just think, like, you could be sitting here talking about, like, that memorable Fry's person.
That one time at Fry's when I just had the best service.
That inspired you.
Now I'm a diehard Fry's fan. No.
This is like the rap stars that talk about their teachers that told them they would never make it. That's what I'm getting from you right now.
Oh my gosh.
The Fry's security guard. The Fry's security guard told me I'd never make it. But look at me now.
Yeah, I couldn't be a DDR champion. Well, I'm not, but I run a games club. Book club, but for games. Take that, Fry's.
Oh man. So I'll coming to like the order of operations for this game.
Yeah.
Landing on the island and like the characters that you meet first, Filbo and Wombus and Beffica.
Yeah.
Introducing Beffica as that third character.
I love her.
Clutch.
I love her so much.
Absolutely clutch.
Yeah.
Every little thing that she asked you to do, I thought was hilarious. The drama she caused, I thought was hilarious. I just thought she was a great character.
Well, and she's wonderful because she solidifies for us at the start. Because is it Wombus or Wambus? I feel like.
Oh no.
Is it? I don't remember. I'm so bad. There's so many characters.
I'll just say whatever you say.
I think it might be Wombus.
Okay.
Maybe it's Wombus. But yeah, Wombus. We meet Wombus and Filbo, and they interact, and we see that Wombus doesn't think much of Filbo, who has the mayor sash, but you saw them kind of lying like basically face down in the mud, delirious, so it's like you don't really know what's happening. Yeah. And when you meet Beffica, that solidifies, because Beffica is like does not like Filbo.
Right.
Beffica is like, you are not cool. Get out of my face. I have a new best friend. You just go. And poor Filbo's just like, I'll just be over here until you're ready. And so I love that solidifies a lot of things for us as a newcomer to the island, where all of a sudden we know Filbo has the title, but not necessarily the leadership chops to really do what needs to be done to bring folks together yet. We know that nobody really respects him, but they all are still within like spitting distance of Snacksburg. So you know that there's kind of hope for something to happen, for some people to come, Grumpuses to come together.
Grumpuses to come together.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I thought it was hilarious, and we talked about this with Kevin, like when you walk onto the island and see Filbo just laying down.
Yeah.
And what was the language that Kevin used? Something like Filbo needed to be more desperate looking or pitiful.
Like pitiful. Yeah.
Because people were like, well, why am I helping this guy as part of this like training?
Right.
It's like, we needed to be laying down.
Yeah. like really, you had to feel bad for this one.
Woe is me. I am but a wayfish lad.
But I think out of all the characters, even though Beffica may be my personal favorite to just talk to, I think Filbo's arc for me was my favorite to see because as you start bringing, because again, the whole thing that brings us to the island is Elizabert says there's Bugsnax here. They're incredible. You have to do a report on them. We get there and the big mystery is Elizabert is gone. Eggabell is gone. The community has ostensibly like disbanded, and we're trying to figure out where their leader has gone. Yeah, and it's interesting to see Filbo particularly from the start, who has the mayor sash, who has this title, but the inability to really pull people together grow with each sort of celebration that you have, each sort of milestone, where I appreciated that he was the one that tried the entire time. And by the end, you see the rest of the Grumpuses starting to answer to that and respect him a little bit more and speak to it a little bit more. But yeah.
Well, they're also, because they're all flawed, they've given in, like all the community members that have branched off, as you're encountering them, they've all so deeply given into the specific flaw that character has. Right. That you can tell they're not happy, and they're not even able to accomplish the goals that they are like hyper focused on. Right. And I think there's kind of some interesting storytelling happening here, coming back to that, like the importance of community. And it's probably hard, I think, for a lot of us in the US at least, where it's like we have such a hyper individualist society. Right. It's so easy for me to think, oh, yeah, like I can just accomplish all my goals on my own. And I don't need other people. And it was kind of nice seeing that put on display. It's like, well, here's what that kind of looks like when you don't have that community at all. Right.
That's such an important point and good point. I think what's really interesting, too, is that sense of you, I guess, technically could do the thing by yourself if you wanted to, but look at how much energy you're spending. Look at how much you're spinning your wheels for such little payoff for your goals. And so, yeah, the ability to actually bring together folks and see them working together and then starting to actually have time to relax, I think is really interesting, because I know just for myself, oftentimes I'm trying to figure out the balance of, okay, what's the difference between me working hard and me just doing things for the sake of, like, I guess I'm doing things, you know? And I think when I saw some of the Grumpuses at the start, I saw them as like, well, we're doing the thing because we just need to do the thing. And they weren't thinking critically about what it means to actually sort of embody the goals that they have in their heads.
Yeah. And, you know, it's also interesting because how many of them, it's probably not all of them because it's, you know, it's still a game, but so many of them, you are having a flat experience as, quote, people. Right. Like Wambus is struggling with his farming when you meet him immediately in the game. And it's not until he's living in community that you start to see his farm kind of grow and blossom. Right. So I think there's something really interesting there from like your community actually is a really enriching experience, even for you as an individual. Right. So. Yeah, I think this is a very random, weird tangent, but I swear. My favorite kind. Okay. Love is Blind. It's a reality show on Netflix.
in season 4 in particular, I've been watching the latest season, so much drama. It's been really fun. But what I've noticed the most is how the community of the people participating in the show really reflect and show kind of almost the true self of the person that they're associated with.
Ooh.
Like, there is one person on the show who I was kind of like, I'm not sure about you. And I saw her friend group and I was like, oh, I think this explains a lot and it doesn't reflect the best on you.
Yeah.
But then there was another participant in the show where I saw their community, I saw their friend group, and I saw that reflected in their own behaviors and actions. And it really showed like kind of the you are what you eat. You are who you spend your time with. You are who you engage with. And so Love is Blind is just a very random tangential connection that I made when I was thinking about community and seeing it reflected on the show, knowing it's highly edited, it's reality TV, but I was thinking about my own community and who I'm spending time with and how do they feed me and feed my goals and intentions, and how do I feed theirs, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when goals seem to be in direct conflict with one another, it doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be conflict with the individuals. Oftentimes, yes, sometimes yes, but like it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And it often can reposition how you approach your own goals.
Right.
And I think about
Wiggle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, get into it.
Oh, well, God, what was the Wiggle and little starts with a G, Gramble. So for those who need reminder, because again, so many characters, Gramble's character is one that does not consume the Bugsnax, which is really interesting. Instead, he focuses on raising them and using almost like pets or a rancher, but a rancher who doesn't eat them. Trains them and has this very like interesting relationship with wanting to like
almost parental.
Yeah, like protect them almost, or be their parent. Conversely, I guess, Wiggle, who absolutely adores and loves Gramble, really loves to eat Bugsnax. And so there's this tension because Gramble maybe wants to reciprocate, but is also more concerned as when we meet him about the safety of his snacks.
Yeah. And it's almost like and they're like in a relationship, right? Like a romantic relationship. And so it's like he has put his own philosophy or worldview above the value of this person that he's in a relationship with. And she has done the same thing, right? She has leaned so heavily into like, I want a rockin' hairdo or a rockin' whatever, because she's a musician.
Yes.
That she is, it's like they are literally geographically, I think, the closest to grumpuses when you encounter them that are not interacting with each other, like on the map. And yet they have such different perspectives on the role of Bugsnax that they have isolated themselves. And what's great is as you play through their story and see them come together, you start to see like, even though they don't change their perspectives on Bugsnax, they are able to like maintain the priority of the other person, the other grumpus, within their relationship, which is like, man, that is a tough hurdle to climb, but if you can get it, great.
Yeah, well, and that's what happens when, sorry if anyone can hear, we have some lawnmowers happening outside that I'm going to try to edit out, but I think that's what happens when you are in a relationship romantically, platonically, like when you have people you're engaging with, you're not going to be able to agree on everything. You are most certainly going to have differences in some of your opinions on how things should be, some of your values, and it really depends. We'll pause real fast. All right. Quick pause because we had to close the windows because we're getting into lawn mowing season, which is very fun. I do not like mowing lawns, P.S.
No,
but I think it's just really interesting to think about how as I maintain my relationships with friends and loved ones, just the ways that there are certain things that I will be able to compromise and work with, and then of course there are things that you don't. And it was interesting to see them navigate that together as a couple.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what a corollary would be in my own relationship. I really love to eat cookies, and Lee really likes to journal. Yeah, those aren't really in conflict. I don't know.
Well,
it's not going to work.
I think from at least my own my own relationship with Sam, what's interesting is like in the Discord and when reflecting this month, I mentioned my personal bug snack is work. It's one of those things where I can excel at work. It's one of those things that I can put my head into and I know exactly what I get out of it. And it makes me feel good because I'm like, look at these sort of accolades or look at these numbers that tell me I did a thing really well. And it's very satisfying, but I can get to the point where I will hyper focus in. I will work far too many hours and to the detriment of my relationship with Sam. Sure. And it's interesting when we have conversations and we have to talk about like, hey, you're focusing too much on this thing. This isn't like very healthy for you. This isn't great for our relationship. What can we do to make sure you're not doing this all the time? And so that's been interesting to think about where it's like, it's a bug snack in real life, so to speak.
Yeah, mine is definitely like hyper organization and like planning. So this actually is a pretty big difference, I suppose, in my own relationship with like I wake up and the pattern recognition part of my brain is like immediately in planning mode for the day. So it's like Lee isn't even awake yet. I'm planning like, okay, we're going to get breakfast here. And then we have 5 other chores to run. And I've mapped those out in my brain to know which order we should go in to have the most efficient route until we get back home. And like that planning is kind of like a need for control that I have, I think, or certainty at least. And Lee is my wife Lee is an artist, designs book covers and like is very much like, I want to kind of go with the flow. I want to like feed me that bug snack, baby. I'm like rocking. And so it's like, I'll ask her, hey, what order do you want to run these errands in? And she's like, there's no answer I'm going to give right now that is going to be more efficient than the answer that you have been clearly thinking about for the last 4 hours. Just do it. Just do the thing that you want. So yeah, that is definitely like my bug snack conflict is certainly something to do with like organization, planning, and that level of like perspicaciousness. I'm not sure if I used that word right.
That's a good word though.
Say I did.
I like that.
I think it's wrong.
I'm gonna say you.
I was an English teacher, but I'm gonna say that's wrong.
Yeah. I appreciate the effort though. That was very good.
Yeah.
But I think what also is really interesting too is why the concept, and we talked about this with Kevin as well, but the fact that consumption isn't inherently a bad thing, right? Being organized is not a bad thing.
Right.
Enjoying your work and like leaning into it is not a bad thing, but it's all about the moderation and what happens when you take it too far versus when you're able to take a step back and realize you can do and focus on other things, or when it happens at the detriment of other things.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about that in relation to the characters that we've met so far. Because like Kevin was saying, it's not about consumption, it's about your relationship to the bug snacks that was problematic. So like Wambus is very much like hyper focused on the farming, and Beffica on like the rumors of society and how bug snacks fit into that. And what's the character's name that does the pets that uses
Gramble?
Gramble. So Gramble has like very clearly like overemphasized, like projected the emotions of like what the bug snacks are and do. So I'm curious, like as you were exploring kind of like the relationship of like what is the relationship between these grumpuses and bug snacks? Was there anything that stood out to you as being like, oh, like here's the problematic relationship for X person?
Well, this is kind of jumping the order, but I feel like this game is really interesting because it's like almost less about the order and more about the characters. I think the one that really stood out to me, and I'm not exactly sure why, was, let me get their name, Shelda. The spiritual advisor, because I think there's something really interesting, and I've just been personally interested at the intersection of health and sort of performative health and spirituality, and the way that Shelda kind of leaned into this, like, I'm going to be this spiritual advisor. I'm going to focus on, being as sort of like speaking in riddles and playing this part to the detriment of like communicating actual information that could have helped the folks that she cares about, I thought was super fascinating. And I think that relationship was really interesting to me in the sense of it was maybe one of the more overtly performative ones that you also see. I work in the influencer space, both as like an influencer outreach person and relations person, and as an influencer. And I think that element of performativity was really interesting to me.
That is a really good point, and I hadn't really thought about it through that lens. Wow. So, Shelda, is that right?
Yeah, Shelda.
So when we meet Shelda and she's like under her tent in the desert, kind of having like this spiritual experience out in the wilderness and wilds.
Yeah.
There is definitely an element of that, which is like, did you ever watch the movie Mystery Men back in the 90s?
I don't think so.
It was like a superhero team up movie
Okay.
with like D-list heroes, like Ben Stiller movie kind of thing.
Oh,
like that was the
that
energy.
sounds amazing.
And there was a character named the Sphinx that was supposed to be this like very wise character that would just like take what people said and reverse it as a way to make him seem wise.
Yeah.
that was definitely the energy. Shout out to all the Mystery Men people out there. You know who you are.
The real fans.
The real fans.
fans.
The people who remember like Kel Mitchell turning invisible, but only when people weren't looking at him.
I love that. Oh, D-level superpowers. I'm kind of in. I'm going to have to look this up because that sounds like an incredible, just silly watch.
I think if you were to ask, like, what was one of the most rented movies in Joel's collection growing up, it would likely be Mystery Men.
Dang. Okay. All right. I'm curious, what about you? Which sort of relationship to Snack, which Grumpus, I guess, did you connect with or maybe pay more attention to when you were playing?
Snorpy, certainly. And it was because as soon as you walk into... So Snorpy is this kind of like nerdy, geeky looking Grumpus, kind of an inventor that also ends up becoming this like extreme conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
When I walked into Snorpy's cabin...
Oh, yeah.
And I looked on the wall and I saw the posters of like the Beautiful Mind style, like strings
just the
connecting
string theory.
all of the like conspiracies that he believes in. I lost it. But again, like the person in me who's like, I'm constantly looking for like, what's the deep lore?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what from this is real and what should I be looking out for? And there were a lot of things on that poster that turned out, I was like, okay, so inside the mountain, there's like this image of like, oh, this is where like the pizza moth comes out of and stuff like that. And I was like, I bet that's real. I bet we're going inside of this mountain volcano thing. I bet that's going to be incredible. And it was. So yeah, I just thought it was such an interesting character, but like it was also perhaps because we have a major problem with conspiracy theories in America right now.
Yeah.
The character that I'm most glommed onto is like, this is a hyper realistic character experience that I was just like very invested in that story and his story.
Yeah, Snorpy is another good one. Yeah, I think also Sheldon and Snorpy were the two that I connected with. I thought Eggabell's relationship with Bugsnax was also very interesting because I think Eggabell was the character who most overtly to me stood out as having an unhealthy relationship. Because she was the one consistently asking for snacks, consistently wanting more. And I just thought, like, with her, it was interesting because I was curious about, like, is this to the level of addiction? Like, that was sort of the initial, like, is this where we're going with Bugsnax that I had with her that I didn't have with anyone else until
I totally agree.
We started sort of digging a little deeper.
It felt like the one that was most explicitly telling a story of addiction of all of them, certainly. I think so. Eggabell is partnered with Lizbert, who was the one who invited you to the island. Yep. And throughout the story, you find video journals of Lizbert
these
and
journals.
Eggabell. And me too. So for those of you who are Lost fans, because we know that Lost is a major influence on this game. And once I learned that, it totally like redefined how I experienced the game. For those of you who remember Lost, the Dharma Initiative videos that they find peppered throughout the island, that's kind of what you're stumbling across. You're like black and white, grainy stories, journals of the previous leader of this community who's gone missing, right? And it's through those journals that you see kind of what kind of leader was Lisbert? Like, what was she like?
Right.
But you also start seeing the deterioration of Eggabell as she is trying to, it seems like, kind of demonstrate that she's strong enough to explore the island with her partner, and like that by getting the Bugsnax, like she'll get that strength that she wants.
Yeah, I thought, and again, I think all of the relationships, all of like either their friendships or romantic relationships were so both heartwarming and in some ways like just like, oh, you feel for them because I don't know, I feel like in a partnership, each partner will have their strength and each partner will have an area that they're weaker. And, you know, it's like I've definitely been in situations where I wish I could have done more, I wish I could have been better so I could keep up. And, you know, so I felt for Eggabell with that because it's like you're on this adventure. Lisbert is this amazing, you know, leader who has discovered Bugsnax and you want to be able to keep up and be able to fend for yourself and carry your own weight. And as we learn, as we progress in the story, Eggabell, part of what happens to Lisbert and Eggabell is because Eggabell basically was like, well, I'm going to do this trek up the mountain and I'm going to start showing off. And that leads to them essentially becoming lost to the rest of the community.
So from a story perspective, like the entire setup is like this community's been divided.
Right.
Lisbert is missing, and there are like rumors about where all the other Grumpuses are. And so like from a gameplay perspective, you're going around and trying to convince each community member to move back in. And to do that, you have to like complete little mini quests for them. And so like that's kind of like the story up until you get to kind of some of the big climax. And then after you get to certain check marks, you have community parties, which kind of opens up new areas for the land for you. The Grumpus that I was most intrigued in based on like the little mini missions that you had to run was Triffany Lottablog.
Yes, Triffany.
Which sounds, we were talking about this earlier, sounds kind of like Beffica, like you would expect this to be like another socialite type character. No, Triffany is like an archaeologist.
So fun.
She is digging into, much like a person after my own heart, digging into the lore of like all of the communities, because we learned from Kevin, many communities have lived on this island, Snaktooth Island, in the past. And so you meet Triffany and she's like around all these skeletal remains. She starts pointing with like the skeletal arm.
You're like, is this really an appropriate use of someone's remains? I don't know.
Yes, exactly. But it was like, it was one of the first times that you get a sense that like this island itself is kind of a character, just like in Lost. And they're like it immediately made me like very curious about all the communities that came before, and like how far back did these ruins go.
Right. Well, and you were saying you did some deep diving into that lore, which I did not do. So I would love to hear what you've learned in your excursions into the internet.
Yes, let's talk about some of this lore.
Okay.
I'm going to give a major spoiler right now. But it's kind of a spoiler for the DLC, not the main game. So, DLC spoiler, I'm going to say it in 30 seconds and I'm going to stop talking about it. The like editor-in-chief of the publication that you work for as a journalist has previously gone to Snaktooth Island, and she is actively trying to suppress stories about Bugsnax. And she is one of the previous groups that had lived on the island for a period of time. In the DLC, you kind of go to this other nearby island that emerges from the sea, and it unlocks actually where Shelda was. It unlocks a secret area there, and it opens up like a whole degree of like the lore, the previous exploring group that was there, etc. And first of all, it totally like makes me understand her response, like this editor-in-chief's response at the end of the game.
Right.
But it also like really opened up for me just the cyclical nature of Bugsnax and Grumpuses on this island.
Dang.
So
Okay.
this is not the skeletal remains that we found, right?
Yeah.
This is actually Triffany's, I think it was her grandmother or
Yes.
something like that had previously been to the island. That expedition is kind of the main point of conversation for the DLC. And talk about like the island being a character.
Yes.
Yeah, I would encourage you, if you don't have time to play the DLC, to at least like read some of the synopsis and things. Like the lore is very deep, and I was just like blown away by the thoughtfulness and the mythology they have built out. Like the moth pizza that you see flying around is like as part of this like kind of, think of like the Triforce, like this like triumvirate of
oh my gosh, of like mega snacks
and things.
Oh my gosh.
So it just, for me, that type of like lore and world building, we're both big Brandon Sanderson fans, like that is something that I absolutely love in stories, and I think is so rare to find in video games as a media. Like it's often like, here's your story and you're playing through the story, and maybe they're referencing some things that happened in the past, but this is like, no, if you care to learn, there is a lot underneath the proverbial hood here.
Dang, that's also incredible, especially considering like indie games and the scope of smaller productions. Like I would imagine this kind of deep lore from like a Destiny, for example, right? Because it's got like a huge honking team that's been around for years, like all of that. But it's incredible to think this 8 to 10 hour experience has so much that they have created beyond just what you experience. I love that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it, it makes you wonder. So in Lost, there's like these corrupting forces. And so every new exploration group kind of has the same cyclical experience of like being slowly corrupted by the island. And that is very much like what we're seeing.
I was like, wait, what? I need to watch Lost.
Snaktooth.
My goodness. I feel like the more we do
it is somehow, I mean, I haven't talked about the show in years, and now like 3 months in a row has come up as a central thing.
I'm like, I feel like I would understand video games better if I watched Lost at this point. This is what I'm hearing.
I don't know about that. What I do think is you would appreciate a lot. There are a lot of Lost Easter eggs in this game specifically. And man, I thought it was absolute hats off to the team and the writing group here, because I was really blown away. I thought they did a great job.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't think we talked about, this is going kind of way back, but I don't think we talked about your favorite Grumpus, because we've talked about who you like connected with in terms of the snacks and their relationship to it and maybe some of the struggles that they're going through. But did you have a personal favorite that you liked?
I think it ended up being Chandlo in the end. I'm, again, like kind of mild spoilers for the game. At the end, you go through Snackburg, and it's being attacked by all of these Bugsnax, and you have to like save like 2 at a time. You have to save members of the community so that you can all escape together. And when speaking of like being bad at game mechanics, one of the first, is maybe the second, I think, things that you have to do is Bugsnax are coming down the mountain, and you have to like shoot the grappling line.
That was not easy. I have to say, like that was not an easy task, and so I do not blame you for what has happened.
It is my fault. I lost Snorpy in the end game. And first of all, like Chandlo was such a kind and caring partner, and like you see him at first and you're like, oh, they introduced like a Chad, like a bro, absolute bro. He looks like he's wearing a backward baseball cap and like a basketball jersey. Like they set him up to be this bro character, but he ends up being one of the most like
the sweetest,
rich and pleasant characters in the entire community. And he's, obviously deeply in love with Snorpy, and they're together. Yeah. And then when I lost Snorpy at the end of the game,
how could you?
And then you walk on it was the only character I lost. And then you get to this big like beach scene where like you've escaped the island. You're watching it, kind of the lava exploding from far away. And you talk to Chandlo on the beach, and he has lost his partner. And it was like absolutely devastating. So I had to
Oh,
go back and replay it so that I could have like all of my grumpuses on the beach together. Because man,
yeah.
otherwise it would have been it was rough times.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Now, okay, because that whole scene when you are basically fighting off the island, like
Hmm.
all of the Bugsnax are coming to you, trying to stop you from leaving. I think we're really hopping around. We're not going really in
We're
consecutive
talking,
order
you know, this is a
today.
game
This
about
is
community, and like
yeah,
the storyline is very much like you bring all the community members in. There's like
yeah.
some big climactic moments, and then they all have to leave the island. So
Right. It's not, I think the story is there to allow us to talk about the community and like
yes,
how they relate
100%.
to the island itself. I'm really interested what you think about like the bug snacks themselves
Mm.
because when you show up at the island, my gut was it is kind of weird, but maybe they're just like Pokemon, they're kind of a natural thing that occurs. And, maybe I shouldn't think too hard about it. But again, because of the nature of what happens when a Grumpus eats a bug snacks, what
Oh.
happens when you discover sort of the core of the island
Mm.
and Lisbert and Eggabell are there, or I guess Lisbert is there and Eggabell is with you. I'm curious what you think about bug snacks and sort of the nature of what they are.
Yeah, my first answer is cute. Asked and answered. I'm done.
They're adorable.
They are adorable.
Delicious.
If you have not seen the game, watch the trailer. At least
Oh
just
my
like do a quick
gosh.
Google image search of like Bugsnax. Look at Strawby. Like absolutely like adorable little critters running around.
So cute.
What's really interesting is as you get deeper into the game, you start seeing that like you start off by thinking there's almost a symbiotic relationship between the Grumpuses
Hmm.
and the Bugsnax. Like the Bugsnax get absorbed into the bodies of a Grumpus, that body part transforms,
Right.
and now they can have a French fry arm, which is great. Who doesn't
Who
want
doesn't
that?
want a French fry arm?
Who does not want that? But as you get further in, and you start seeing the addiction issues, and you start
Mhm.
seeing like what happens when you have an unhealthy relationship to Bugsnax, you start to see that it's almost a bit more parasitical.
Yep.
And the big kind of like reveal at the end of, right before the end of the game, you go inside of a mountain, you solve a puzzle, you go inside of
Yeah.
a mountain, and you find Lisbert there.
Mm-hmm.
A greatly changed
Oh, a
Lisbert.
greatly changed Lisbert.
She is kind of monstrous in size at this point. Her
Mhm.
body parts are all Bugsnax
Right.
that all seem to be like somewhat in her control. She has some control over the Bugsnax around her.
Right.
And so that you get this reunion moment with
Mhm.
Eggabell and Lisbert, but
Mhm.
it kind of shows that like at this point it would be very difficult to make a case that Bugsnax are in any way like a good
Right.
and happy thing.
They're not very cute when you're like in the belly of the island and they're all around you. The cuteness kind of fades away a little bit.
A little bit. How about you? What were your thoughts?
Um, I think my head went to the parasitic relationship. I think it's really interesting just to see how by the end, especially with Lisbert, how I find it interesting because you don't really know if she's able to transform back. I think that's what was interesting to me is you see her as she helps you escape the island, you help the Grumpuses escape. And from a small standpoint, like if I have a French fry arm, they kind of allude to the fact that, okay, well, give it some time, it'll transform back. You will be yourself again. Lisbert is so fundamentally like sucked in and changed by the island. I found myself wondering whether or not she could change back, how long it would, and sort of what that means in terms of some of our relationship with these unhealthy mechanisms. And like, maybe there is time for her to do that, but it's going to take a lot of time for her to like escape the grasp of the island herself. Like I wouldn't want to say it's never possible because I feel like that's a bit sort of bleak, but
did you feel optimistic at the end of the game?
I did. I felt like because she and Eggabell had the power to control and at least hold back some of the snacks. They had the sort of mental wherewithal to be able to say goodbye to their friends and wave
right.
As the island, well, the volcano was going, which that's a whole different problem. But I felt like because we know the snacks themselves, the effects wear off if given time away from them. I felt hopeful that maybe if they were able to resist the siren call, that they could find recovery, and they have, Eggabell and Lisbert have each other on the island to be able to try and take each other, through that journey.
Speaking of that, I mean, a quick side note, and then I'm going to come immediately back to that point. One of the things Kevin pointed out is that we never actually see Lisbert the leader. We just get kind of the rose-colored glasses memory of the Grumpuses of her being a good leader. At the end, when she's this transformed thing, you learn that she is still kind of protecting her community by like having this kind of control over the Bugsnax. And so I think I hadn't thought about this until you said that, like the unhealthy relationship to leadership in that role, like, oh, it is all my responsibility to take care of these people. Now coming back to what you just said, I because I lost Snorpy and because there was somewhat of an ambiguous ending for what happens with Lisbert and Eggabell.
Right.
I started looking up any commentary on kind of the barrier gaze trope. If you're not familiar with this, it's like a problem in a lot of our media where you kind of get a loving couple, gay, queer couple, and they end up being killed off at the end of their story arc. And what I found is actually... I don't know if it was Kevin who was being interviewed, but this was like actually a specific point in discussion for them as a writing team. And that initially they were like, oh, like maybe we write it and like it ends and like it's kind of a more pessimistic ending. They didn't survive or whatever. And they recognize, which is like kudos to them, hats off to this group, that like they recognize like, oh, that falls into the barrier gaze trope. We definitely don't want to further that. And so they rewrote the ending to be more optimistic about like the future of these two. And I guess you do kind of see you kind of see off of Snaktooth Island from their perspective at the end of the game. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well,
like that?
You don't see that, but I remember when the credits roll, they have some like Polaroids.
This is it.
And you see them sitting on the beach, ostensibly still on Snaktooth Island, I would assume, but they are back to themselves and they're holding hands, which again, that for me was kind of like I think they were able to make it. Yeah.
So I think your reading is good. I think like they were very intentionally like, like we can squeeze some like cheap teardrops from people by like having these two like die, but they recognize like that. No, actually, there's more power and opportunity by like saying like, no, they survived this and they are now together and they were separated for all this time. Like, they've addressed kind of the unhealthy nature of their relationship. I don't know. I think that's just such a rare thing that people are able to recognize when they're falling into those kind of bad habits and then to make change. Yeah. It reminds me of like, didn't Lizzo like release a song that had like perhaps some like problematic language last summer?
Yes.
And she changed it like a week later.
It's easy to do. It's like if someone says something and does you sort of the service of correcting you, like
the service of correcting you. Oh, what a brilliant way to frame that. That like it requires effort to correct someone. It is a service they are doing.
Right. I mean, it's hard, and like if anyone does it to me or if I do it to anyone, it is as much a kindness, to the thing that I'm trying to hopefully fix or represent better, but also just to the person or to myself to say, hey, like I care about you enough to say like this is a thing that needs to change. So I appreciate that the team, whether or not they thought of it or someone kind of called it to attention as they played or, whatever happened, where they said this is something that we recognize was a thing and we don't want to do that and we're going to make the efforts to not do that. I think that's really cool.
So good. So good. The other thing, the major plot point at the kind of end game moment is that Eggabell, when seeing this much changed Lisbert, immediately like just does like you don't even see it happen. Yeah. She goes and eats a ton of Bugsnax so that she can transform and be monstrous in appearance, just like Lisbert. And what
I really loved about that, kind of going into the idea that you can't do things alone, right? Elizabert is there trying to hold the whole island back by herself, be the leader that she knows everyone at least conceives her to be. Whether she is or not, we never really know because we don't get the chance to know her in that way. But the fact that at the end of the day, she doesn't do it by herself. Even though we don't take her back to Snacksburg, she has community there in the form of Eggabell and sort of, us at least to talk to her and just say, like, this is not you doing this alone, which I thought was really beautiful.
Oh, that's so, so good. I hadn't put that together. That's a really great point. One of the characters we have not talked about that I learned also has a lot of deep lore is... Oh, I cannot. It's not listed on our character list here. The cactus version
of Triffany?
Of Triffany. The cactus.
Triffany cactus gets
Triffany
their own
cactus
lore.
has its own lore.
Wow.
Apparently, in maybe the DLC, you start receiving anonymous letters.
What?
That are from Cactus Triffany.
I need to play this DLC.
Right?
I only played the base game, and now I'm thinking I need to hop in.
Yeah, I need to hop in for sure. So there's some fun things happening there. At the end of the game, Triffany is wielding Cactus Triffany to fight off the Bugsnax as you're trying to escape.
Wait, in the base game? I totally didn't catch that.
I didn't either. I had to go back and find it.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
So, the DLC seems well worth the time. I would love to now come to the biggest mystery that I never solved. I would love to know if you have learned anything about this. This is the only game I have ever seen that takes bathroom breaks as seriously as I take bathroom breaks.
I thought of you the first time I saw Grumpus bolt to the bathroom. I was like, I think Joel's going to appreciate that they included this element of real life.
I hydrate very well, and when Jenny and I used to work together, it was like every 40 minutes I'm like running to the bathroom. So yes, they take the bathroom seriously.
Yes, they do.
What was going on with the bathroom? Did you get any insights into this? Like wasn't there like an intruder or something? And
yes. I think, wasn't that, there's like a whole side quest, and I can't remember if it was tied to the intruder where did you see the giant watermelon Bugsnax?
No.
Okay, there's like a whole side quest tied to like a big watermelon, if I'm remembering this correctly. So there's like actually a side quest tied to this.
Okay.
But in terms of bathroom breaks and running to the bathroom, there's also is it Wambus? Mm-hmm. There's the fertilizer side quest. Did you do that one?
No.
Where you're supposed to feed, I think it's Filbo, a snack, and it gives him indigestion, and he runs to the bathroom, and you're supposed to like collect the fertilizer, This
explains so much. And I saw people talking about this in the Discord, and I was like, I didn't experience this part of the game. Yeah. What happened here? Because I remember there being monstrous sounds coming out of the bathroom during one of the parties or something like that, like the spooky night maybe or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And so I had assumed that I didn't realize it was all tied to a side quest to follow up.
Yes.
So there's a watermelon monster or something.
I'm trying to remember how, and I'm hoping. I can't remember if that was how we got into the side quest, but there is a watermelon side quest that I think happened that I did right around that time, and I can't remember if it was directly connected to the bathroom or if I just did it right after that.
Got it.
But yeah, there is a whole big side quest that happens with a giant watermelon, and then again, there's a side quest that happens with Filbo where you are trying to get him to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
So there was a lot of there was an abnormally high amount of bathroom humor, and
say an appropriate amount of bathroom humor for a Thomas.
Joel,
for Joel. So get in the comments if we got this wrong. Make a correction.
Yeah,
get
please
in the Discord.
let
us know what's going on. I'd love to know what was going on with the bathroom monster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in this.
Yes.
Were there any mysteries that you encountered that you're it was a question that was maybe a little unanswered and you didn't get a chance to learn about?
I think one of the things that I was left wondering after the game's credits. No, it was right before the credits rolled. There's a strawbee that hops up off the boat, or not off the boat, but hops onto the deck of the boat. Did you not see after the credits?
I did not experience this.
Oh my gosh, what? Okay, so when I played, I think it was, you have the beach scene and you talk to everyone. They're like, let's go, and we got to hide out, because we got to wait for the effects to wear off before we see anyone. And then you hear the call with, was it Crombus? Crombie, your boss from Clumby Clumbernut.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the call with Clumby Clumbernut being like, "No, you think they're gonna talk about the snacks? No one will believe them," or was whatever.
You're fired.
Yeah, you're fired. And then a strawbee hops up on sort of the deck of the boat and is like, "Strawbee," and then the credits start. And I was like, are we seeing snacks? Like, do snacks ever come into Grumpus society? Do they ever leave the island? Can they survive? I mean, I'd imagine they couldn't survive this ocean swim, but if we start bringing snacks to mainland, like, what's going to happen? So that for me was one of the bigger questions of like, how is this going to continue? Yeah.
I totally saw that and read it as like, oh, there's just a strawbee on a piece of wood. I did not connect that it was not in Snacksburg. I thought it was just like, oh, and here's Strawbee signing off.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely correct that that's what it was.
They're not on the island anymore, right?
My
if I'm not,
yeah,
hope I'm remembering.
You're right.
Correct.
I totally misread that. Like,
well, and I'm like, maybe it is just like a cute little sign off, but it seems like everything is so intentional in the game. I'm like, why? Like having a strawbee there feels like it means something.
We all remember what happened in the Lost World Jurassic Park 2.
Do we remember what happened?
We all remember where NGen, I believe is the name of the like cell group that has infiltrated the island, decides that the best course of action is to try and take a T-Rex on a boat off of the island and
oh
back
my goodness.
to the States.
Yeah, because that's what we need in the world now is just dinosaurs running everywhere.
So maybe we're gonna get a Bugsnax 2, The Lost World.
Oh my gosh.
Where
Snacks
we find out what
everywhere.
happens when a strawbee makes its way onto the mainland.
Well, because we also don't even really know how they, like, I don't feel like we got an answer in terms of how Bugsnax sort of come to be.
Yeah.
Right? Do they just like appear out of nowhere? Are they just, do you eat a strawbee and then cut off your arm and it becomes a sentient strawbee? Like, what happens? So,
I had a theory early on in the game, an unconfirmed theory, that the Bugsnax are all transformed Grumpuses, like of days of yore.
Yeah.
I don't think that ended up being true. There was not enough evidence. The preponderance of evidence did not support this conclusion in the end.
But I had the same feeling. Like, that was a theory I ran with for quite some time while playing. Because I bet, like, oh, these are Grumpuses, and they're actually, like, it's the whole Soylent, the Soylent are people.
Soylent
like,
Green is people.
I thought that was what we were going to get into, which, again, I like you. I don't think there was enough evidence for me to like lean into that wholeheartedly, but I did have that in my mind for a while.
I think Kevin mentioned that was not something that they wanted to answer.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the Bugsnax? But I think from a purely evolutionary standpoint, the fact that these two seemingly very different species have such a tightly connected relationship with one another and like how it affects their biology, there's gotta be something.
Yeah, there's gotta be something.
Maybe the like Triforce of Bugsnax monsters. It's almost like Pokemon in that way, where you have like the Pokemon gods. That's kind of what we're getting.
Right.
With
yeah, that is kind of what is it, the legendaries? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Super interesting. Bugsnax.
Bugsnax. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the communal aspects.
Yes.
Let's start with like basics. What drives apart a community?
Oh, that's a big question.
No, it's the basic one, remember?
I
just said it. I prefaced it by saying this is the basic one.
Question.
This
okay.
is the easy question for all of us. What drives apart a community?
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, it's easy.
Let's just solve that.
I don't understand. This is off the cuff basic questions.
I mean, I think we talked about this earlier, but I think this sense of individualism is something that really does, if not completely drive everyone apart, puts in enough of a stake that any other friction would break a community. Seeing yourself as separate and unconnected to the people around you, seeing your problems through sort of blinders, and not really understanding how what you do can affect others and how others can affect you. I think that is probably, from playing this, at least one of the biggest drivers that I saw that separated them out. What about you?
I'm going to maybe approach this from maybe a more personal perspective. The thing that drives apart communities that I have been most a part of has always been convenience. Which this is not like a theme from the game, I don't think. But in my life, anytime a community that I have been a part of has fallen apart, it has been because people have moved just a little bit too far away.
Right.
Or we're not in the same classes anymore. Or like things that like, I think if we had a more communal focus as a culture would be resolved. But in my friendship communal experiences, the thing that has most driven apart communities has been an unacceptable level of inconvenience.
Yeah, which is that's a great point. And very true. Well, because I know I tend to be very guilty of having my friend groups be based on the things that I do, right? So especially when I was in like the dance community and I was dancing a bunch, all of my friends, I mean, partially because we also were just training and spending a lot of time together, they were the folks I hung out with. And really interestingly, once the pandemic hit, it was a very weird experience to not have that physical presence and convenience of being able to say like, oh, I'm going to dance class. These are my friends, because now we don't have dance class. And I had so many people essentially like fall out of my life because that convenience wasn't there. And that ability to just say, well, we're in the same place at the same time. We get along, you know? Yeah. And so it is definitely something that I think in modern society, especially, knowing that that convenience and having relationships sometimes that are based on that convenience is good, you know, and it's nice to have maybe your work friends that are separate, but knowing that when you want a community, you have to treat it like it's just, we think about romantic relationships a lot and how much work and time you put into it, right? And I think what's really interesting is we don't often talk about how much work and time needs to be put into fostering a community and fostering friendships. Yeah, because it's like you can just have people come together based on a singular interest, but that is not necessarily, that is a type of community, but that is maybe not the most enduring type of community, right?
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm bought in whole hog. That is a great perspective. You know, something that tends to surprise, we've met a lot of like people from different countries and cultures, even just as a part of this podcast and conversation. But one of the things that tends to surprise people is just how spread apart Americans are. Like, I remember growing up, I would drive 30 to 45 minutes to see my friends. Yeah. I had a car. Everyone in Indianapolis had a car. You get made fun of if you don't have a car. And that was just the norm. Every like Thursday, Friday night, I'm driving 30 to 45 minutes to go see my friends that live in kind of a different area, what have you. And so like there was a very intentional effort to spend time with these people. And like we had some interests in common, but like, to your point, like it wasn't like a singular unifying point of interest. But I think as we get older and you start working or having a family or whatever, I would never just randomly drive 30 to 45 minutes to go see someone anymore. Yeah. But oftentimes that is what it would take if you don't happen to live in proximity with someone. Right. And so I feel like we're almost put at a disadvantage because of how our cities are laid out. Yeah. Where it is so hard to maintain community with people that don't have like that singular common point of interest.
Don't get me started on the ways that our infrastructure is not conducive to community. Oh my gosh, there is so much. Our transportation and our highway system, our roads, we have no sidewalks. There are no third places, which are basically gathering spaces for community. We have either homes, like apartments or malls or places you're expected.
Outspending money somewhere.
Yeah, you're expected to spend money.
Yeah.
So there's so much, specifically in the US, I think that is by design. Some intentionally, maybe some not so intentionally, but by design, I think it is harder to create a strong sense of community in the US specifically, like in the sense of place.
I totally agree. I'm sorry everyone for this like divergence from video games into community building, but this is like the whole point of this particular game is like communities, how they fall apart and come together. For our 10-year anniversary, but in the 13th year of our marriage, we finally got to take a Euro trip. Lee and I were both English majors. We'd always talked about going to Paris and London together. So this last fall, we had to put this trip on hold because of COVID. We finally got to go to Paris and London. And we got to go see some really good friends of ours that live in Sheffield, which is a little bit north of London. And they lived in this incredible housing complex. This is like a massive set of building structures that were built kind of when socialized housing was being built, I guess in like the 60s and 70s. I might have this wrong. Apologies if my dates are off. But they actually threw a little party while we were there. It happened to be Thanksgiving. And almost everyone that came to this party lived somewhere in this complex. And all I could think was, what a tremendous way to feel like you have community around your home. Is like these people live in the building next door or two buildings over or whatever. And it just it felt so different than anything that I had experienced before. Like I've lived in apartments. This was not that. This is like housing that is built for like especially students, especially artists. Like they have like certainly like lower income housing available as well as like higher income housing. But the idea that you can build community in place, that you can walk downstairs and there's a cafe at the base and there's a grocery nearby, like it was just such a different experience. And I just thought like, man, how impoverished we are for community here in the States just because of how our cities are set up.
It's so true. I remember even, so I had the opportunity to go to Amsterdam last summer, and it was amazing to see how around like between the hours of like maybe 3, 4, and 5-ish, everyone was outside of their homes, sort of sitting either on the steps, on the stoops. There were tables and chairs maybe across from their homes. And everyone was out having like sort of an afternoon snack, drink, people like, and it's one of those things where I'm like, we don't see people outside of their houses like this. And I think even just tying it back to the game, like however loosely, but that's what those milestones that Philbo would throw, which I think were so important in building community is every time you had new members come back, Philbo would throw a party and say, hey, let's go to the fire. Let's have a celebration. Let's do ghost stories and music together. And it's so important to have those spaces for people to just be present with one another because, I think we see it physically in Bugsnax, but I think also if you have that even in your digital communities, right? Having those times to just be together, I think that's why, for me, our monthly hangouts are really exciting, not simply because we get to talk about the games, but we just get to see the other folks who are in the Geeks and Crowns community and
experiencing a similar thing with us.
Yeah, just like hanging out and laughing about a thing and going on tangents. And it's so important to have that with folks. I
had a funny like record scratch moment at this particular house party where like literally it was like the music stopped and everyone like stared at me.
No,
I was talking to one of their friends and we were chit-chatting and I was like, wow, I am blown away by how good the public transit is here in the UK. Like everywhere we go, like there's buses, there's the tube, like there's the trains everywhere. Like It has been incredible. And it was like the person I was talking to stopped and looked at me, and then everyone else in the party kind of stopped looking. I was like, did I say something
Right.
inappropriate? And they're like, say that again. And I was like, it's amazing here. Like, your guys' public transit is amazing. They're like, you're being sincere. And I was like,
And they probably were like, this
yeah.
is garbage.
They were like, have you not been to any other country in Europe? We're nothing compared to all these other countries. And I was like, if this is nothing, I don't know what I'm living in.
I know. It's absolutely wild. Yeah, it's incredible just how our space is organized affects our ability to connect with other people.
Yeah.
It's just wild to think about.
Okay, so now we've answered the basic question. How do
Yeah,
you
the
bust apart a
easy 101.
community?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you build a community?
This question is so big.
Okay.
So big.
Let's talk about let's refine it a bit.
Yeah. This is what I get asked for work all the time.
I mean, like, very literally,
Yeah.
like, we are building a community with this Geeks and Grounds experience.
Yeah.
We want you guys to be engaged. We want the comments.
Mhm.
We think it's like something that we were missing out on in our own lives, is like kind of a space where we could share a common experience with people, really wherever they happen to be. Maybe what are some lessons that you have learned as you've been going through this community building experience for Geeks and Grounds?
Drawn from Lizbert's page, I think being willing and able to acknowledge and ask for help and understand that you can't do it by yourself. I think there's a certain amount of leadership that can go into starting a community, but to actually build a community, you have to be able to, as a leader, like, relinquish things and be able to allow others to take on some of that. And I tend to be I struggle with that. And so I think even in asking you to be a part of it and, like, help lead and help be a person to help foster, and then allowing people in the community to do things like contribute keys so that other people can play, and offer suggestions for, hey, what if we found out about the games a little sooner so we have, the opportunity to get them on sale. Those are all small things, but for me, they've been instrumental for allowing people to be a part of creating it and not just being like a sole person in charge of a thing.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And I think,
it's
like,
my own struggle too.
Like, pre-announcing a game because there's a sale happening on Steam is a great example where it's like, especially in American culture, in US American culture, like, it is so easy to fall back on bureaucracy as a reason to do or not to do something that would be beneficial for a community.
Right.
And it could have been very easy to be like, well, we don't announce games until the first of the month.
It's like,
and that's like,
we have a timeline to stick to, And
like, we're very timeline driven people. If you can't tell, we're very timeline driven people. So, like, I mean, it's just nice. It was a nice moment for us to step back and be like, well, what type of experience are we trying to build here? It's like, well, a communal one.
Yeah.
Let's do the communal thing and not the bureaucratic thing here.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like a big, I think, a big takeaway.
Right.
The other one is probably around curiosity. I love talking. Maybe it's because my dad's a preacher. Maybe it's because I was a teacher. Maybe it's because maybe it's because 7 hours a day I'm in meetings and I'm presenting in 5 of them.
Little wallflower Joel.
But it's like, it can be so easy to get caught up in talking that you forget to be curious about the other people and their experiences. And for me, especially part of like this Geeks and Grounds thing, like, not only getting to be a part of a community, not only getting to see people's comments and their commentary on the games, but being able to ask questions and be curious about these people and their lives, like you all, but I say these people, you people and your lives. Like, to me, it's like, wow, what an incredible gift to be a part of something like that. And so I guess, like, if I were looking for a couple things to build a community around, it's like focusing on the needs of the community over bureaucracy. And 2, taking the time to be curious about people and their experiences. It's probably the things for me.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it any better myself, honestly. I think that's super important. And I think trusting your community too, is something that I am constantly aware of, and trusting that everyone who is here because they also really care. And that people want to be part of a community. Trusting that people want to be a part of it. You know, I think that's also really important to remember and acknowledge and build that into as you're both fostering a community and growing a community.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Any other final Bugsnax reflections?
No, I think this game was a really pleasant surprise for me. I think, again, I said at the beginning, but I went in thinking it's just going to be a silly game with snacks that were funny, and we'll have some maybe body horror that's going to be fun to discuss. But I think there was so much heart and thought put into the story about the community coming together, being driven apart and coming back together again. I found it really, really valuable to play. So I'm very happy that we did. And thanks to community members, Thespiomancer and Ghostly, who recommended this game to me way back when I said, hey, I want to maybe do this thing. And they told me Bugsnax would be really fun to play. And I'm very happy they did, because I would not have picked it myself.
Yeah. It's been a really fun one. My final thought or reflection is like, is it possible to catch the moth pizza?
I didn't.
I didn't either.
I did not.
If you caught the moth pizza, get in the comments. Let us know how you did it.
All the tricks.
Man, that was the thing. It's like, it's one of the, I think it's maybe the first bug snack you see because it causes your plane crash, right?
Yeah.
Or ship crash, whatever it is. And like, I was like, is this like a Ash Ketchum seeing Ho-Oh at the beginning of the Pokemon series moment? Because it's a bit more nefarious than that. And so I was like, maybe it's catchable, but I never did. So that's like my biggest outstanding question. Can you catch the moth pizza?
I hope we can. If not now, maybe in the Bugsnax 2 that we're all keeping our fingers crossed for.
Fingers are crossed. Great.
Yeah. I think that's it for this episode, this deep dive into Bugsnax. If you are interested in playing games with us, joining our community, we don't eat Bugsnax, but we do talk about games every month, and we play a game together. So be sure to visit geeksandgrounds.com for all of the information that you need. You can find our social links. We're Geeks and Grounds on basically every platform, and sign up for the newsletter, because that's the hub for where information gets disseminated, and it'll be the easy one-stop place that comes into your inbox every Tuesday morning at 7:30 p.m. a.m. Pacific time.
Finding all of your supplemental materials there, all the random media that we reference as we get into these shows.
Yep.
Great place to get connected. So geeksandgrounds.com, definitely check it out. Everything you want to know is there. Where can people find you, Jenny?
Folks can find me at Kimchica on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. And where can folks find you? You
can find me at My Grand Falloon, pretty much everywhere. Well, from all of us to all of you, if you're looking to build a community, bring snacks. Is that a good one?
I think that's a good one.
Okay.
We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.